Well, hello, and welcome to the Employee Safety Podcast from Alert Media, where you'll hear advice from experienced safety leaders on how to protect your people and business. I'm Peter Steinfeld. Today, I'm speaking with Ashley Guest, Head of Strategic and Operational Solutions for Trust and Security at Uber. He discusses how his team identified a critical gap in their emergency communication plan and describes the tools and processes they use to fill it. Ashley recounts how their solution improved Uber's employee safety initiatives and transformed their response capabilities. This episode was recorded in front of a live audience at Alert Media's 2025 Employee Safety Conference in Austin, Texas. Let's listen in. Hey, Ashley, thank you for being here.
No, thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to this. You've had a really interesting career. You started as a beat cop in London. You rose up through the ranks. You became a detective. And now you're leading strategic security operations at Uber. Can you talk more about that and what lessons you learned and skills you learned that you've translated over?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was in the police in London for around sort of 12 or 13 years. Absolutely wore one of those ridiculous helmets for about 2 years. Horrendous. So I moved over to, obviously, to be a detective, which is a very fulfilling career path. So the end of my career really focused on, back then it was 2010, cybercrime was a real sort of emerging trend. Fraud and cyber, how they came together. So it was a really sort of interesting challenge to tackle on sort of the forefront of what was back then a very sort of new crime type. And then this unknown company at the time called me up and said, do you want to come over to Amsterdam and lead an investigations function? I've never heard of Uber at the time. I think in London they were relatively small. So I jumped at the opportunity, moved to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, and started my career over at Uber. So I remember my first day getting over there, I was like, right, what do I do? And they're like, well, that's what you're here for. I was like, okay, what do I do?
Right.
Crack on, is basically what they said. So at the time, the mission was to build an internal investigations function that targeted abuse from inside and then how we can prevent and detect fraud from the outside. Again, we were scaling very quickly, launching in dozens of markets a week. So we were a target of fraud, and so it was my job initially to help mitigate that loss. A battle that was fought well, but it was incredibly difficult. So I did that for a couple of years, built out a team, and then we moved on to more of like the intel side of things. So you're sort of your more sort of corporate security function, and then sort of moved over to lead operations in EMEA in its entirety. I think at the time we were operating in 43 countries, a couple of hundred offices, and this is just in EMEA at the time. So a very large footprint and a sort of very challenging environment. Particularly at Uber, you essentially have the digital and the physical come together. In a lot of our countries, we have physical locations where earners on the platform, they can come in for face-to-face support to sort of challenges they have with their account on the platform. And as we all know in this room, those are the areas where we might see people at their finest. So a lot of focus on how we protect our employees in these locations, how we can mitigate any sort of instance at these locations, and how we can essentially keep them safe. So super interesting role. I then moved over to the great state of Texas 3 years ago to lead strategy for trust and security, which is where I am at the moment.
Fantastic. And what was that transition like from the public to the private sector? What's like maybe the number one lesson you learned that if I could do it all over again, I might have done it a little bit differently?
I would say the transition was fantastic. Free lunch is the first thing I remember. Obviously, I came from the public sector where for a $5 sandwich, it would take 6 forms to get that reimbursed in a year's time, to this company that you have free lunch and drinks. And so my advice on the transition is it isn't as scary as some would assume. And I was very fortunate to join at a time where it was very early. And I think I joined in 2016. So very early in the company's growth. And you had a real opportunity to drive change, have impact. There is no bureaucracy. It's all about growth. So it was a really good opportunity to actually make a difference and drive change. So my advice on that particular transition is don't be not afraid, but I think there is definitely opportunities to further one's career during those transitions.
Let's talk about your current role. What are your primary responsibilities?
Yes. So a few things. One, part of my team is the physical security systems side. So all of the access control platforms, cameras, badging, the physical security hardware, At the moment, we operate in about 90 countries, about 400 locations that we have. So it's a decently sized footprint. So like that's quite a big piece. And then there's 4 other sort of distinct pillars. So the core like strategic planning side, like how we align our organization's strategy with that of the business. So a big thing is like how we deliver our solutions globally. Another sort of really important function is we sort of run our program management bench. And I think probably many in this room have the same challenges. There is this sort of constant battle between sort of regional operations and central operations. So we're a central team. We cover the globe and we have our partner teams in regions that are managing operations. And so one of the big focuses is how can we be more smart with the resourcing that we have? How can we deliver solutions in a scalable way that doesn't mean there's 6 people doing the same thing? So there's a big focus of my team is scaling solutions. And a very simple example of that is when it comes to testing on the Alert Media platform. It's super important that we do global testing and regional testing, but let's do it in a very similar, concise way. So we take a lot of like what works, we scale the program, we reduce operational burden, and we execute on that. In addition to things like, financial governance and vendor management sits with us.
So when you talk about scale, that's pretty interesting. Does that mean that the products that you invest in, since you have so many teams around the world, they really have to be simple to use, or people you find they won't use them?
I think simple to use and intuitive. And so just as an example like of our corporate structure makeup, we have 4 24/7 GSOCs. We have one in Bangalore, Amsterdam, Dallas, and Mexico City. There's a decent footprint, probably 60 individual operators stroke analysts. We also have a dedicated intelligence team that's based essentially in DC, but with sort of like embedded analysts in the region. So we have a lot of people to tackle this mission. And so we are very keen on simple tooling, efficient tooling, and accurate information.
Well, when you start thinking about that scale and distribution of people all over the world, so many different locations, how does that inform your overall response plan when it comes to assisting employees during critical events?
Absolutely. I think that's the point of what we're going to sort of discuss is how do we support all of our employees? I think we have around, including contingent labor, probably 80,000 people in 90 countries. And so one of the things to think about is not how we can communicate with them. Obviously, that's critically important. The actual challenge is what do we do if they need help? And that is the important area to think about. And we also need to be thinking that, let's say, for example, we have 4 or 5 employees in Lebanon. We have exactly the same duty of care obligations to them as we do to 500 people in Dallas. So how do we prepare ourselves to offer the best service and the same service to employees, irrelevant of their location?
Is this a gap you recognized immediately when you came on board, or is it something you evolved into over time, realizing, you know what, we got to take care of these people the same as we're taking care of these people?
100% over time.
Okay.
We scaled from a very small security organization to a much larger one. And very much, we were excellent at responding reactively to events. I think one of the sort of turning points was there was the explosion in Madrid in, I think it was 2021, where it was like 30 or 40 staff members didn't respond. So the GSOC is doing what they should be doing. They're picking up the phone, they're calling, we're trying to engage with them. And there came a scenario where one individual wasn't directly impacted, but just wanted some support, wanted some help. And we didn't at the time have the processes in place to effectively offer that. And I think all companies go through this learning phase of you don't alleviate your duty of care by telling someone something's gone wrong. It's what do you do next? So that's where we went through a process of essentially how can we make sure in every location that we have, we can offer some level of support, some level of on-the-ground solution to the individual, irrespective of what the ask is.
I know when we first started talking with Uber several years ago, you had an existing mass communication platform and maybe it wasn't doing everything you needed to and you realized there was a gap there. Could you talk more about that? Like what were the challenges you had with it and how did you fill that gap?
I can actually say I was quite naive when we came to this subject. To me, it sounds quite simple. It sounds simple that we have a list of employees in a platform, we can press a button and we can press send. It is way more complex than that. You know, on your side, but also on our side, we realized that the data that we had on our employees was crap. It was horrendous. So the gap really came that we need partnership. We need partners with our vendors to support us in having the best value from the platform that we can get. Does it actually work? And unfortunately, that previous vendor was not a great partner. So we needed to change. I think that's when, I think it was like early 2022, we were engaging, talking about like what our requirements are and what our transition plan is to eventually onboard the platform. Because setting the notification is just one step of that entire crisis management workflow. And it should be the easiest step. It should be the quickest step. And unfortunately, it wasn't. Now it is, which is good.
When you think about buying technology, do you now think beyond just the actual technology itself and think about the company that you're working with and the partnership, as you were alluding to? Is that equally important to the technology itself?
Absolutely. I think in some regards, more so, because when you have good relationships, you can influence product, you can influence direction, and you can build something that not only suits us, but also potentially suits your other clients as well. So for us, partnership is probably the most important thing. Yeah, it's great if that's what the product does, but like, what are the next steps? And especially as we are coming into an area across, I think, a lot of technology products across the security space where there's a lot of competition now. There's a lot of new companies, there's a lot of new ideas, and partnership now, I think, is even more important than it was before. So can we work together? Will you listen? You don't have to agree, but will you listen? And can we use the platform in its most potential use way?
Now, change is not always easy. You've got to convince a lot of stakeholders and leadership, hey, I know we invested in this old solution, but we're looking at something better. How did you go through that process to get people on board? Was it easy as, yeah, do it like right away, or did you have to cajole people?
There's always cajoling. But it actually came around a time, there was a tsunami in New Zealand, and we have employees in New Zealand, so we decided to send a message to them, just to give them a heads up, like the warning's come through, are you okay, do you need assistance? And with this previous vendor, they went through, they selected New Zealand and they pressed send. And for some reason, it sent it to everyone in Spain. It was like maybe 600 people in Spain. Very confused.
All freaked out. Like,
all freaked
tsunami's
out.
coming.
Yeah, tsunami in Spain. Horrendously embarrassing for us as well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But this wasn't realized. Looking back, it wasn't realized for a while. And so they're also doing phone call follow-ups to make sure people are safe.
Oh, wow.
And they're starting to realize, like, this doesn't quite make sense. These people don't sound like they're from New Zealand. So yeah.
Strange accent.
Strange accent. Very strange accent. And we have a lot of people in New Zealand. And so, yeah, it was a platform problem. And essentially, if we can do something, even if it costs more, but it's better, like, we're very pro that as a company. And again, we're still very nimble. There's not a lot of bureaucracy. And so it's not like there's dozens of approval stages. Is this a better product? Yes. Then why haven't we got it? Let's do it now. That was our transition plan. This is better. We're going to do it. Let's go.
And when you communicate with people, I understand that two-way communication is very important to you. Just because you've got people all over the world, you don't necessarily know exactly what people are doing far away. And just getting responses back in real time help you triage the situation, understand where you need to focus. Can you talk more about that, why that's so important?
Yeah, absolutely. Essentially, it's critical. So as you know, with the platform, we will send out an alert. It has like a survey, one for yes or two for no. Are you safe? Do you need assistance? It's very important that we enable that two-way communication. We need to know exactly what the challenge is, what the problem is. Often we get responses, is this phishing? This is a common problem as well. But it's essential to have a platform that can communicate in two-way, but across multiple different types of communication stream. The biggest impact we've had recently was in Latin America. It was with WhatsApp. With WhatsApp, it comes from a verified account from us as Uber. So that actually helped a lot with our employees understanding it is actually coming from us. There's a lot of phishing testing nowadays, and so people are sometimes wary of these communications. And so having something from a verified account that's trusted really helped in people acknowledging the message, but also responding.
Yeah, it's so important to have multiple channels, like you said, because like the WhatsApp being verified, that's huge, but also just meeting people where they are. So as you made the switch to Alert Media, how have you found the response from all your employees and their use and acceptance of the tool, and then leadership? Were they pleased with the results?
I think everyone's very pleased with the platform. Now, if we think about where we are now, we have the platform that is robust. It's very simple. We have pre-approved comms, we have languages. It's from a crisis management perspective, it's a very quick process. We run employee testing to make sure that employees know the numbers these messages are going to come from and to familiarize themselves with that. I think leadership is pleased. Our operators and our GSOC are pleased. And our employees have a communications platform that is efficient and is quick. One example of that was, I think it was in December last year, there was a tsunami warning in San Francisco that came up, and the team was able to get a message out to the entire workforce before national or local news picked it up. Everyone was very confused.
Yeah.
So, very confused. But that's what builds trust. And that's what enables our workforce to really know that essentially we do care. We do want to make sure that they're safe, and we will invest in the best tools we can to achieve that mission.
There's one more thread I want to pull based on what you said earlier, which is data. Data is really important. Having clean data for your employees, contact information. I know it's not magical overnight, but have you identified things that, if we just did this, we could start getting cleaner data?
Yes. One of the reasons was initially we weren't collecting certain information as a mandatory field. For example, with some of our contractors, a cell phone wasn't required. So obviously that causes a challenge. And so on that side, we can put processes in place that make sure that comes in. And then we can go back and try and clean up some historical data. But it was just a mess, fundamentally, on the sort of the employee side, missing country codes, locations, area codes, wrong phone numbers. It's really important that Alert Media has that validation process. And so we do know things that are trying to be imported that are incorrect. And then we can circle back and we can correct. We can also encourage our counterparts and other leaders to make sure their employees update their numbers. We have Security Awareness Month. And so that's a good opportunity to remind employees about all things security, but to make sure, is their phone number updated and correct in the platform that we use for HR? Is that correct? So we're in a place now, which is good, but honestly, it's taken about 2 years of hard work on both sides. And fundamentally, the platform is only as good as the data that's in there. And that's our problem, not yours. And that took a while to get around.
Well, as we start to wrap up here, managing security on a global scale must come with a lot of significant challenges. So what's top of mind for you in particular, and maybe your team in general right now?
Obviously, there's a lot of scenarios that are going on around the world that are causing concern. Our focus is nothing groundbreaking. Fundamentally, how do we deliver the best service we can to our employees? As we think about sort of the future, less about AI is a big thing. There's a big focus on us as a company, how can we be smarter? It doesn't solve everything, but are there challenges that it can potentially solve? And how can we be more efficient with the resourcing we have to deliver a better service by utilizing AI and AI solutions if it works correctly? So that's a big area: efficiency, scale. Essentially, think about what is our core business? Our core business is protecting people. And so how can we do that in a more efficient way is really what's on top of our mind for the organization at the moment.
Very good. Any other thoughts or best practices you want to share?
Just partnership. Communicate the challenges that you have. And I know we're at the conference at Alert Media, but we've had a great partnership with you over the years. And no partnership is ever perfect. It's been rocky at times. There's been some challenges, but you have to communicate to overcome those. And we're in a good place. So advice is, this can be a challenging transition, but it's certainly a worthwhile transition. At least it has been for us.
Right. Well, the more challenges you have in implementing something internally, the more important that partnership is to help you work through it.
Absolutely.
Well, Ashley, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Thank you for being a guinea pig too.
Absolutely.
I think that went pretty well. What do you guys think? Very good. Well, to learn more about Ashley and his work with Uber, click the links in the episode description. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. Stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to the Employee Safety Podcast from Alert Media, the industry's most intuitive emergency communication and threat intelligence solution. To learn more about how to protect your people and business during critical events, visit alertmedia.com. Until next time.